Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button to support Battleground Stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The last message from Outpost 09 arrived at 2:47 p.m. on March 3rd. 3 words, interrupted by static. There's something here. Then there was silence. My name is Commander Elise Vaughn, and I was tasked with coordinating this team to conduct 6 months of observation and research in the most hostile and challenging environment on Earth. Antarctica never forgives mistakes. It offers no second chances. And at the edge of the world, surrounded only by ice, wind, and darkness, you quickly learn that some things are worse than the cold. We weren't prepared for what waited at Outpost 09. None of us were. It started 4 months before everything fell apart. January 2019. I'd been selected to command a joint military science operation in East Antarctica, coordinates so remote they barely registered on satellite imaging. Outpost 09 was a research station built into the ice itself, designed to study climate patterns, seismic activity, and atmospheric conditions in one of the planet's most extreme locations. The briefing was standard: 6-month rotation, 4-person crew, monthly supply drops, weather permitting. Daily check-ins via satellite uplink. Simple, clean, professional. But there was something the briefing didn't mention. Something I only learned later, when it was already too late to turn back. Outpost 09 had lost contact before, twice. Both times the crews were eventually recovered. But the official reports were sealed, classified. When I pressed for details, I was told it was equipment failure. Nothing more. Standard protocol in extreme environments. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded answers. Instead, I accepted the assignment. 40 years old, decorated officer. 3 tours in hostile territory. I'd handled pressure before. I thought Antarctica would be different. Quieter. Less dangerous. I was wrong. The team assembled in late January at McMurdo Station, the staging ground for all deep field operations in Antarctica. That's where I met the others. Dr. Ian McCarthy arrived first. 35, MIT educated, specializing in glaciology and climate modeling. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent years in labs and field stations, someone who understood that nature didn't negotiate. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses that fogged constantly in the cold. "Commander," he said, nodding once, "looking forward to working with you." "Likewise, Doctor. You've been briefed on the conditions?" "Thoroughly. I've worked 3 Antarctic seasons already. This'll be my 4th. That should have reassured me. Experience matters in places like this." But there was something in his voice, a hesitation he tried to hide that made me wonder what he wasn't saying. Sergeant Lena Koval came next. 32, logistics and security specialist, built like someone who could carry a full pack through a blizzard without breaking stride. She'd served 2 deployments in Alaska, knew cold weather operations inside and out. Her file was spotless. No complaints, no incidents, just solid, dependable work. "Ma'am," she said, snapping a crisp salute. "At ease, Sergeant. We'll be spending 6 months together in a tin can buried under ice. Let's keep it informal when we can." She relaxed slightly, but I could see the way her eyes scanned the room, cataloging exits, noting equipment, always assessing. Good. That kind of vigilance kept people alive. Private Noah Kim was the youngest. 24, fresh out of advanced training, assigned to Outpost 09 as part of his cold weather certification. He was eager, maybe too eager, the kind of soldier who volunteered for everything because he hadn't yet learned that some assignments are better left to someone else. "Private Kim, reporting, ma'am," he said, standing at attention. "Relax, Kim. You'll get plenty of chances to prove yourself out there. For now, just focus on learning the ropes." He nodded, but I saw the excitement in his face. He thought this was an adventure, a challenge to overcome. He didn't understand yet that Antarctica strips away everything you think you know about yourself and leaves only what's real. And sometimes, what's real isn't enough. We spent 2 weeks at McMurdo, running drills, testing equipment, reviewing emergency protocols. The weather window for transport to Outpost 09 was narrow. Miss it, and we'd be stuck waiting for another break in the storms. The plane that would take us in was a ski-equipped LC-130, built for polar operations. Loud, cold, uncomfortable, but reliable. The flight out was smooth until we hit the interior plateau. Then the turbulence started, the kind that makes your stomach drop and your hands grip the webbing until your knuckles go white. Below us, the landscape was featureless. White in every direction, broken only by the occasional shadow of a crevasse or the jagged edge of an exposed ridge. 15 minutes to drop zone, the loadmaster shouted over the roar of the engines. I looked at the others. McCarthy stared out the small window, face unreadable. Koval checked her gear for the third time, methodical, focused. Kim looked pale, but he kept his jaw set, trying not to show nerves. The plane dropped altitude, and suddenly Outpost 09 appeared below us. A cluster of prefabricated modules half buried in snow, connected by enclosed tunnels, the whole structure designed to withstand winds that could peel metal from bone. A single communications tower rose from the main module, antennae bristling against the sky. Solar panels lined the southern exposure, angled to catch what little sun the region offered during the summer months. It looked small, fragile, a human intrusion in a place that didn't want us. We landed on a prepared ice runway, skis biting into the compacted snow with a sound like tearing canvas. The ramp dropped, and the cold hit us like a fist. -40 Celsius, not counting wind chill. The air hurt to breathe. Every exposed bit of skin burned. "Welcome to the end of the world," McCarthy muttered, pulling his balaclava up over his nose. We unloaded quickly. Supplies, equipment, personal gear. The plane wouldn't stay long. The pilots wanted to be airborne before the weather turned. Storms could roll in without warning out here, trapping aircraft on the ground for days, sometimes weeks. The outgoing crew met us at the entrance to the main module. 3 men and a woman, all of them looking worn, tired, eager to leave. Their leader, a captain whose name I didn't catch, gave me a quick handshake and a folder containing operational logs and maintenance records. "Everything's in order," he said, voice flat. "You'll find the station in good condition. Comms are solid, power's stable. No issues." "No issues," I repeated, watching his eyes. He looked away. "Nothing worth mentioning. Standard stuff. Equipment quirks. You'll figure it out." Before I could press, he turned and started toward the plane. The rest of his crew followed without a word, moving fast, like they couldn't get away quick enough. Koval watched them go, frowning. "That was weird." "Agreed," I said. "But we've got work to do. Let's get inside and get oriented." The main module was larger than it looked from outside. Central common area with a galley, workstations, and a small medical bay. Sleeping quarters branched off to the east, 4 small rooms, each barely big enough for a bunk and a locker. The lab occupied the western section, filled with monitoring equipment, sample storage, and McCarthy's domain of computers and climate sensors. Everything was clean, organized, functional. But something felt wrong. It took me a while to figure out what. The walls were too bare. Personal items, photos, anything that might indicate the previous crew had lived here for 6 months were gone, stripped away, as if they'd erased every trace of themselves before leaving. "Commander," McCarthy called from the lab, "you should see this." I found him standing in front of a wall of monitors, displaying data streams from sensors scattered across the surrounding ice field. Temperature, wind speed, seismic activity, atmospheric pressure. All of it looked normal, within expected parameters. "What am I looking at?" I asked. He pointed to a graph showing seismic readings from the past month. There, and there. Small tremors, barely registering. But they're rhythmic, too rhythmic. I studied the pattern. He was right. The spikes appeared at regular intervals, like a pulse. Ice shifting? Maybe. But I've never seen shifting ice produce this kind of consistency. It's almost like... He trailed off, shaking his head. Like what? Like something's tapping. From below, the words hung in the air between us. I wanted to laugh it off, call it an equipment glitch, tell him he was reading too much into random data. But I didn't. 'Cause deep down, I felt it too. The sense that something about Outpost 09 wasn't right. That first night, after we'd settled in and run system checks and established our routines, I lay in my bunk and listened to the station. Every building has a voice. The hum of ventilation, the creak of metal expanding and contracting, the whisper of wind against insulated walls. You learn to filter it out, to sleep through the ambient noise. But Outpost 09 had a different sound, a low-frequency vibration that I felt more than heard, like standing too close to a generator. It set my teeth on edge, made my skin prickle. I told myself it was nothing, normal station operations, the kind of thing you get used to after a few nights. But I didn't get used to it. None of us did. By the end of the first week, we'd fallen into a rhythm. McCarthy spent his days in the lab, monitoring data, running models, occasionally suiting up to collect ice core samples from the field. Koval managed supplies, ran equipment maintenance, and kept a watchful eye on the station's security systems. Kim handled grunt work, everything from meal prep to waste management to assisting McCarthy when an extra pair of hands was needed. I divided my time between command duties, reviewing operational logs, and keeping in touch with McMurdo via daily satellite check-ins. Everything ran smoothly, professionally, by the book. But beneath the surface, tension was building. It started small, a door that wouldn't stay closed, lights that flickered at odd hours, equipment that powered down without explanation, then rebooted itself minutes later. Electrical gremlins, Koval called them, shrugging it off. Happens in extreme cold. Connections get brittle. Circuits behave weird. I accepted the explanation because I wanted to, because the alternative, that something was systematically interfering with our systems, was too uncomfortable to consider. Then the sounds started. It was Kim who heard them first. He came to me one morning looking exhausted and said he'd been kept awake by a noise in the walls. A scratching, he called it, like something moving through the insulation. Probably just thermal expansion, I told him. Metal contracts in the cold makes all kinds of noises. Yes, ma'am. That's what I figured. But he hesitated. It sounded deliberate, like it was following a pattern. I sent him to get some rest and made a note to have Koval inspect the walls for structural issues. But when she checked, she found nothing. No damage. No signs of settling or stress. Everything was solid. 2 days later, McCarthy reported the same thing. Scratching sounds during his night shift in the lab. He'd gone so far as to record them, playing back the audio for me. I listened, headphones on, volume up. At first, I heard nothing but static and the distant hum of ventilation. Then faint but distinct, a rhythmic scraping. 3 short scratches, pause, 1 long scratch. 3 short, 1 long, like Morse code. What does it spell? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. McCarthy's face was pale. Nothing. It's not Morse. It's just pattern, repetition, like something's trying to communicate but doesn't know how. I took the headphones off and handed them back. Equipment interference. Acoustic artifacts from the ventilation system. Don't read too much into it, but I didn't believe my own words. And, from the look in McCarthy's eyes, neither did he. That night, I heard it too. I was lying in my bunk, trying to sleep, when the scratching started. Faint at first, barely audible over the station's ambient noise. Then louder, closer, coming from the wall directly beside my head. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short, 1 long. I sat up, heart pounding, and pressed my palm against the cold metal. The vibration traveled through the wall, into my hand, up my arm. It was real. Not imagination, not acoustic tricks. Something was there, on the other side of that thin barrier, repeating a pattern I didn't understand. I grabbed a flashlight and went to wake Koval. Together, we suited up and went outside, circling the station's perimeter, looking for signs of damage or intrusion. The wind tore at our gear, snow stinging any exposed skin. Visibility was poor, maybe 50 meters before everything dissolved into white. We found nothing. No tracks, no disturbance in the snow, no indication that anything had approached the station. But as we stood there, flashlights cutting weak beams through the darkness, I felt it. The sensation of being watched, of something just beyond our field of vision, patient, waiting, studying us the way we might study an insect under glass. "We should get inside," Koval said, her voice tight. I nodded and we hurried back to the airlock, sealing the heavy door behind us with more force than necessary. The scratching didn't stop. Over the next 3 days, it became part of the station's background noise, as constant as the ventilation hum. We all heard it now, though no one wanted to talk about it directly. Instead, we made excuses. Thermal stress. Ice shifting beneath the foundation. Acoustic anomalies caused by the unique atmospheric conditions. Anything but the truth we all felt but couldn't prove. That something was out there, just beyond the walls, trying to reach us. McCarthy threw himself into his work, spending 16-hour shifts in the lab, analyzing data, running calculations, searching for rational explanations. I found him one morning hunched over his monitors, eyes bloodshot, 3 empty coffee cups beside his keyboard. "When's the last time you slept?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Sleep's overrated." "Commander, look at this." I moved closer. His screen displayed seismic data from the past 72 hours. The rhythmic tremors we'd noticed earlier had intensified. More frequent, stronger amplitude. And now they were accompanied by something else. "These are acoustic readings," he explained, pointing to a secondary graph. "Low-frequency sound waves traveling through the ice. Normally, we'd only pick up wind or the station's own mechanical noise. But this," he zoomed in on a section. "This is structured, deliberate. It's not random environmental noise. What is it?" "I don't know, but it's coming from below us, deep, maybe a kilometer down, maybe more. And it's getting closer." The word sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with temperature. "Closer how?" "The source point is migrating upward, slowly but measurably. Whatever's making that sound, it's moving through the ice toward the surface." I stared at the graph, watching the data scroll past in real time. Could it be geological, magma movement, tectonic activity? There's no volcanic activity in this region. The bedrock is stable. This doesn't match any known geological process. He finally looked at me, and I saw fear in his eyes. "Commander, we need to report this to McMurdo." "Agreed. I'll make the call during the next comm window." But when I tried to raise McMurdo 2 hours later, the satellite uplink failed. No signal, no connection, just static and an error message I'd never seen before. Equipment malfunction, signal degradation, atmospheric interference. I tried again. Same result. Koval came to help, running diagnostics, checking connections, rebooting the system. Nothing worked. Our primary communication line to the outside world was dead. "How long until the next supply flight?" Kim asked, trying to keep his voice steady. 3 weeks, I said. "Maybe longer if the weather doesn't cooperate." 3 weeks. 21 days of isolation with no way to call for help if something went wrong. The thought sat in my stomach like lead. "We have the emergency beacon," Koval reminded me. "If things get bad, we can activate it. Search and rescue would respond. Only in life or death situations. And right now, we're not there yet." I looked at each of them in turn. "We stay calm. We follow protocols. We document everything. When communications come back online, we report. Until then, we maintain operations and keep our heads. They nodded, but I could see the doubt in their faces. The same doubt I felt, but couldn't show. Leaders don't get to be uncertain. Leaders have to project confidence, even when they're screaming inside. That night, the temperature dropped. Not outside, that was expected. Inside. The station's heating system struggled to maintain baseline, and despite Koval's best efforts, we lost 2 degrees overnight. Small enough to dismiss as a minor technical issue. Large enough to make us start sleeping in extra layers. I woke at 0300 hours to find my breath fogging in the dim light of my quarters. The thermometer on the wall read 16 degrees Celsius. Still above freezing, still survivable, but wrong. All wrong. I pulled on my parka and went to check the mechanical room. The heating units were running, working hard, but something was pulling heat from the station faster than the system could compensate. Koval met me there, flashlight in hand, already inspecting the insulation seals. "Nothing's damaged," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. "No leaks, no breaches. The system's operating at full capacity. It should be warming us, not losing ground. Could something be draining power?" I checked. Power consumption's normal across all systems. This doesn't make sense. But it did make sense, in a terrible way neither of us wanted to acknowledge. If heat was being pulled from the station, and no mechanical failure could explain it, then something else was responsible. Something that wanted us cold, vulnerable, weak. The next day brought the storm. It appeared on the weather monitors around noon, a massive low-pressure system building over the interior plateau. Wind speeds approaching 100 kilometers per hour, visibility 0, estimated duration 36 hours minimum. McCarthy studied the satellite imagery with growing concern. This isn't right. The formation's too rapid, too concentrated. Weather systems don't behave like this in Antarctica. What are you saying? I'm saying this storm formed directly over us. Like it was targeted. I wanted to tell him he was being paranoid. That storms were natural, random, beyond human comprehension or control. But the words died in my throat because I'd already stopped believing in coincidence. By 1400 hours, the storm hit. The wind screamed against the station, a sound like a living thing, furious and hungry. Snow battered the reinforced windows until we had to seal the metal shutters to protect the glass. The entire structure shook with each gust, metal groaning under the strain. We gathered in the common area, the safest part of the station, and waited. There was nothing else to do. In a storm like this, you don't go outside. You don't check equipment. You don't risk exposure. You hunker down and pray the walls hold. Kim sat with his back against the wall, knees drawn up, staring at nothing. McCarthy paced, unable to sit still, checking monitors every few minutes even though the external sensors had gone offline. Koval cleaned her sidearm for the 3rd time, hands moving with practiced efficiency, finding comfort in familiar routine. I tried to project calm, but inside, my mind was racing. 3 weeks until possible rescue, no communications, dropping temperatures, mysterious sounds and seismic activity, and now a storm that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, trapping us inside with whatever was scratching at our walls. The power flickered, once, twice, then darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in dim red. But those 3 seconds of absolute blackness, when the only sound was the storm, and the only sensation was the cold creeping closer, felt like hours. "Generator's still running," Koval reported, checking a handheld monitor. "Main power should restore in a minute." But it didn't. The lights stayed red, the heating system stayed offline, and the temperature, already too low, began to drop faster. We worked through the night, Koval and I taking turns in the mechanical room, trying to restore power while McCarthy monitored conditions and Kim kept watch. Every solution we attempted failed, Every workaround led to another dead end. It was as if the station itself was fighting us, refusing to cooperate. By dawn, the temperature in the common area had dropped to 8 degrees Celsius. We were burning through our emergency heating packs, small chemical warmers designed for short-term use, not sustained survival. At this rate, we had maybe 2 days before hypothermia became a serious risk. "We need to activate the emergency beacon," Kim said, teeth chattering. "We're not going to make it 3 weeks like this." "Not yet," I said, even though every instinct screamed that he was right. "If we activate that beacon, search and rescue comes. But in this storm, they can't land. We'd be pulling them into danger for nothing. So we just sit here and freeze. We adapt. We survive. That's the job, Private." He looked away, jaw tight, but he didn't argue further. The storm raged for another day. 36 hours of constant wind, driving snow, temperatures outside that would kill in minutes. We took shifts sleeping, 2 awake at all times, watching for any change in conditions, any sign that rescue might be possible. During my watch, around midnight on the second night, the scratching changed. It was louder now, more insistent, and it wasn't just coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from below, from the floor, from the ice beneath our feet. I pressed my ear to the metal decking and listened. The sound was clearer down here, less muffled by insulation and air gaps. 3 short scratches, 1 long, over and over. But now there were other sounds mixed in, a low grinding like stone scraping stone. And beneath that, so faint I almost missed it, a humming, not mechanical, organic, like vocal cords trying to form words without a mouth. I pulled back, heart hammering. "Commander?" Koval's voice came from across the room. She was watching me, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "What is it?" "Nothing," I lied, "just checking the foundation integrity." But it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. The storm broke on the 3rd day. The wind died as suddenly as it had started, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt more oppressive than the noise. We opened the shutters to find the world outside transformed. Snow had drifted against the station in massive walls, bearing the entrance tunnel and half the solar panels. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, empty of clouds, offering no explanation for where the storm had come from or why it had stopped. McCarthy suited up to check the external sensors. I wanted to stop him, to keep everyone inside where I could see them, but we needed information. We needed to know if the equipment had survived. He was gone for 20 minutes. When he returned, his face was pale behind the frost, coating his goggles. "Talk to me, Doctor." He pulled off his gear slowly, hand shaking. "The sensors are destroyed. Not damaged. Destroyed. Torn from their mounts and scattered across the ice. Some of them are buried 100 meters from where they should be. Wind damage. The mounting bolts were sheared. Clean cuts like they were sliced with something sharp. Wind doesn't do that. Wind bends, tears, breaks. It doesn't slice." We stood in silence, absorbing the implications. Something had been outside during the storm, something strong enough to tear industrial-grade sensors from reinforced mountings. And it had done so while we huddled inside, helpless, unaware of how close it had come. "We're activating the beacon," I said. No more debate. No more waiting. "Now." Koval moved to the communications panel and flipped open the protective cover over the emergency beacon control. She pressed the activation sequence, and we waited for the confirmation light. It didn't come. She tried again. Nothing. "It's not responding," she said, voice tight. "Check the connections." "Check everything." She did. Everything checked out. The beacon should have been transmitting a distress signal to every monitoring station within 1,000 kilometers. But it wasn't. The system was powered, the circuits were intact, but no signal was going out. Someone or something had disabled it, not with tools or force, but with precision, with intent. We were cut off, trapped, and whatever had been scratching at our walls now knew we couldn't call for help. Fear does strange things to people. In combat, you see it turn soldiers into heroes or cowards, sometimes in the span of seconds. But this wasn't combat. Combat has rules, an enemy you can see, objectives you can understand, a framework for courage. This was different. This was waiting in the dark for something you couldn't name. Kim was the first to break. It happened on the 4th day after the storm. We were rationing food, stretching supplies that were meant to last until the next drop. The heating situation had stabilized at barely tolerable levels. We'd sealed off the sleeping quarters to concentrate warmth in the common area and lab. 4 of us, living in 2 rooms, trying not to think about the scratching that now came at all hours, echoing through the walls like a patient predator circling its prey. I found Kim in the airlock, half-suited, trying to open the outer door. "Private, what are you doing?" He spun around, eyes wild. "I can't stay here anymore, Commander. Something's in the walls, in the ice. I can hear it whispering my name." I moved closer slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "You're exhausted. Fear and isolation are playing tricks on your mind. Come away from the door. You hear it too. I know you do. We all do. But we keep pretending it's nothing. We keep lying to ourselves." His voice cracked. "I need to leave. I need to get out of here before it gets in. If you go out there, you die. You understand that? The temperature's minus 45. The wind's picking up again. You wouldn't last an hour, even fully suited. Maybe that's better than whatever's waiting in here." The words hit me hard because part of me, the part I worked to suppress, agreed with him. But I couldn't let him see that. Couldn't let any of them see the doubt creeping through my own thoughts, like frost across glass. "Kim, listen to me. We're getting out of here. 3 weeks, maybe less. Supply flight's coming. When it does, we're all leaving. Together. But only if we stay alive. Only if we stay rational." He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly began removing his gear. His hands shook so badly I had to help with the clasps. After I got him settled with a sedative from the med bay, I called a meeting. All 4 of us, sitting in the cramped common area, drinking lukewarm coffee, facing reality. "We need to talk about what's happening," I said. "No more pretending. No more making excuses." McCarthy leaned forward. "Something's out there, or in there, in the ice. Something that's aware of us." "That's not possible," Koval said, but her voice lacked conviction. "There's no life at this depth in Antarctica. No mammals, no birds, nothing that could produce sounds or interact with our station." "Then how do you explain the beacon failure? The destroyed sensors, the temperature drops that defy physics?" McCarthy's frustration boiled over. "We're scientists and soldiers. We deal in facts, and the facts say we're not alone." "What are you suggesting?" I asked quietly. "That there's something conscious out there, something intelligent. I don't know what it is, but I know it's responding to us. The pattern, the rhythm, it mirrors our own behavior. When we're active, it's active. When we're quiet, it goes quiet. That's not coincidence. That's interaction." The silence that followed felt heavier than the cold. "I'm ordering increased watch rotation," I said finally. 2 people awake at all times. We document everything, every sound, every anomaly, and we prepare for the possibility that we might have to survive longer than 3 weeks." "How much longer?" Kim asked, voice small. I didn't answer because I didn't know, and not knowing was worse than any truth. That night, the power failed again, completely this time. No emergency lights, no heating, just darkness and the sudden absence of the mechanical hum we'd learned to filter out. In the silence that followed, we heard it clearly. The scratching had evolved into something else, a tapping, rhythmic, deliberate, coming from multiple locations. The walls, The floor, the ceiling, as if whatever was out there had surrounded us, mapping the station, learning its structure. I fumbled for a flashlight, found it, clicked it on. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating the terrified faces of my crew. "Mechanical room," I said. "Koval, with me. McCarthy, stay with Kim. Keep the lights on, keep each other visible." Koval and I moved through the station, flashlights sweeping the corridors. The tapping followed us, always just behind, never where our lights could reach. My breath came short, fogging in the beam. The temperature was dropping fast now, maybe a degree every 10 minutes. We reached the mechanical room to find it in chaos, circuit breakers thrown, wires pulled from terminals, equipment scattered as if someone had torn through it with systematic violence. But the door had been sealed from the inside. Nobody had been in here, nobody human. "This isn't possible," Koval whispered. But it was happening, right in front of us, reality bending around something we couldn't understand. We tried to restore power, working by flashlight, reconnecting what we could, resetting breakers that kept tripping the moment we threw them. My fingers were numb, despite the gloves. Koval's face was pale with more than cold. Then the tapping stopped. Complete silence. No mechanical hum, no wind, no scratching or tapping or grinding, just absence. "Why did it stop?" Koval asked. "I don't know. Maybe—" A scream cut through the station, Kim's voice, high and terrified. We ran, found McCarthy standing in the common area doorway, flashlight trained on the far wall. Kim was pressed against it, hands clawing at the metal, trying to push himself through solid steel. "It's in the walls!" he screamed. "It's trying to get inside me. I can feel it." "Kim, nobody's there," McCarthy said, but his voice shook. "You're panicking. You need to breathe." I grabbed Kim's shoulders, tried to pull him away. He fought me, stronger than his frame suggested, eyes rolling white in the flashlight beam. "It showed me things," he gasped. "Things under the ice. Old things. Wrong things. They've been here forever, waiting. And now, they know we're here too." "Kim, focus on my voice. You're having a panic attack. The isolation, the stress, it's breaking you down. But you're safe. We're all safe." Even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. He finally collapsed, sobbing, and we got him sedated again. But as I held his shaking form, I saw it. On the wall where he'd been clawing, frost patterns, but not random. They formed shapes, letters almost. A language I didn't recognize, but somehow understood at a primal level. A warning, or an invitation. The next morning, Kim was gone. His bunk was empty. His gear was missing. The outer airlock showed signs of recent use. "He couldn't have," Koval said, staring at the log. "He was sedated. There's no way he woke up, suited up, and went outside without us hearing." But he had. Somehow he'd left the station in the middle of the night, walked out into temperatures that would kill him in minutes, and vanished into the white. We searched as much as we dared, staying within sight of the station, calling his name into the wind. Found his footprints leading north, away from safety, walking in a straight line as if following something only he could see. The tracks ended at a crevasse. We stood at the edge, looking down into darkness that seemed to have no bottom. Koval dropped a flare. We watched it fall, spinning, shrinking until it was just a point of light that eventually winked out without ever hitting bottom. "He's gone," McCarthy said flatly. I wanted to argue, wanted to believe there was a chance, but I'd seen too much death to lie to myself. Kim was gone, and whether he'd jumped or been lured or simply walked until the ice gave way didn't matter. The result was the same. We returned to the station in silence, 3 instead of 4, carrying the weight of failure and the knowledge that we might be next. That afternoon, I found McCarthy in the lab, staring at his monitors with the intensity of a man who'd stopped sleeping. "I ran the acoustic data through every filter I could think of," he said without preamble, trying to find meaning in the pattern. "And I found something." He played an audio file, the scratching, the tapping, the grinding sounds we'd been hearing for days. But this time, he'd isolated specific frequencies, removed background noise, enhanced the signal. What emerged was a voice. Not human, not animal, something between or beyond, speaking in tones that vibrated in your chest, forming words that bypassed your ears and went straight to the oldest parts of your brain. "What's it saying?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "I don't know. But whatever language this is, it's old, really old, older than human civilization." "Old. That's impossible. So is everything else that's happened. Commander, I think we're dealing with something that's been frozen in this ice for millennia, maybe longer. And the station, our presence, the heat we generate, we're waking it up." I thought of Kim walking toward the crevasse, of the frost patterns that looked like language, of the beacon that wouldn't signal and the power that failed without cause. "We need to leave," I said. "Now. We take what we can carry. We head for the emergency shelter at Station Victor. It's 40 kilometers south, but it's equipped, and it has working communications." "In this cold, with the storm building?" Koval shook her head. "We'd never make it. We die if we stay. We might die if we leave. Then I'll take might over definitely." We spent the rest of the day preparing. Essential supplies, cold weather gear, emergency beacon components we might be able to repair at Victor. We worked in silence, each of us alone with thoughts we didn't share. As night fell, I stood at the window looking out at the ice that stretched forever in every direction. Somewhere out there, Kim's body was frozen in a crevasse. Somewhere below us, something old and patient waited. The scratching started again, louder now, more insistent. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short, 1 long. And for the first time, I understood what it meant. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a countdown. We left at dawn, when the light was strongest and the wind had died to a whisper. 3 of us, loaded with packs that would either save our lives or slow us down enough to end them. Station Victor was 40 kilometers south. In good conditions, with proper equipment, it was a hard day's march. In our condition, weakened by cold and fear and sleepless nights, it would take longer, maybe too long. I sealed the station behind us, knowing we'd never return. Whatever waited in that ice, whatever had been speaking through the walls, would have Outpost 09 to itself. The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it felt like abandonment, like running from a battlefield. The first few kilometers were manageable. The terrain was flat, the snow compacted enough for stable footing. We moved in silence, saving our breath, conserving energy. McCarthy led, following the GPS coordinates. Koval brought up the rear, checking our back trail every few minutes, watching for pursuit, even though we all knew nothing human could track us out here. By noon, the cold had worked its way through every layer. My fingers were numb inside double gloves. My face, even behind the balaclava and goggles, felt like frozen leather. Each breath burned going down, came out as ice crystals that clung to the fabric covering my mouth. We stopped to rest in the lee of an ice ridge, heating field rations over chemical tabs, forcing ourselves to eat calories we didn't taste. 15 kilometers down, McCarthy said, checking his GPS. "We're making good time." But even as he spoke, I saw the sky changing, a darkness on the horizon building like smoke. Another storm, and this one was moving fast. "We need to pick up the pace," I said. We did. Pushed harder, legs burning, lungs aching. But the storm moved faster. Within an hour, the wind had picked up, driving snow that reduced visibility to meters. Within 2, we were walking blind, following compass bearings and Jeep's coordinates, hoping we didn't veer off course into a crevasse field or ice fall. The temperature plummeted, -50, -55. Cold that would freeze exposed flesh in seconds, that turned your breath to ice before it left your mouth. We roped together, McCarthy in front, me in the middle, Koval at the rear. If one of us fell, the others would feel it. In theory. In practice, in a storm like this, a fall could pull all three of us down before anyone could react. I lost track of time. There was only forward. 1 foot. Then another. Then another. The world shrunk to the few meters ahead. The rope connecting us. The sound of wind that drowned out thought. Then McCarthy stopped. I nearly collided with him. Caught myself. Looked past him to see why we'd halted. Through the driving snow, I saw it. A shape. Dark against the white. Wrong proportions. Too tall, too angular. Standing motionless in the storm, as if the wind didn't affect it. What is that? Koval's voice, distorted by wind and distance. McCarthy raised his light. The beam swept across the shape, and for just a moment, I saw it clearly. Not rock, not ice. Something else. Something that absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. A surface too smooth, too perfect. And on that surface, patterns. The same patterns I'd seen in the frost on the station walls. Language, or mathematics, or something that was both and neither. The shape wasn't alone. As we stood there, frozen not by temperature, but by recognition, other shapes emerged from the storm. Tall markers, spaced at regular intervals, forming a line that stretched to both horizons. Ancient, deliberate, placed by hands that weren't human. The station was built on top of something, McCarthy whispered. We disturbed something that was never meant to be disturbed. One of the shapes began to hum, the same low-frequency vibration we'd felt through the station walls. Then another joined it, and another, until the air itself vibrated with a sound that bypassed hearing and went straight to the bones. 3 short pulses, 1 long, 3 short, 1 long. The countdown we'd heard in the scratching. Only now it was all around us, coming from the ice, from the markers, from the storm itself. Run, I said. We ran, stumbling through drifts, yanking each other up when someone fell, driven by pure animal terror. Behind us, the humming grew louder. The storm intensified, and through it all, I felt something ancient and patient finally losing patience. How long we ran, I don't know. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time lost meaning. There was only the next step, the next breath, the desperate need to put distance between us and whatever we'd found. When we finally stopped, gasping, legs shaking, we'd lost the GPS signal. The storm had intensified to white-out conditions. We couldn't see more than a meter in any direction, couldn't orient ourselves, couldn't even be certain which way was forward or back. We're lost, Koval said flatly. I checked my compass. The needle spun lazily, refusing to settle on any direction. Same malfunction we'd seen at the station. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forces we didn't understand, with no way to navigate, and a storm that showed no signs of breaking. We dig in, I said, build a snow shelter. Wait it out. We worked by feel more than sight, cutting blocks of compacted snow, stacking them in a traditional emergency shelter design. My hands were so numb I couldn't tell if I was still wearing gloves. McCarthy moved like a machine, mechanical, automatic. Koval kept looking over her shoulder, as if expecting something to materialize from the white. The shelter was cramped, barely large enough for 3, but it blocked the wind. We sealed ourselves inside, lit a small chemical heater, and huddled together for warmth. We're going to die out here, McCarthy said. Not panicked, not afraid, just stating a fact. Maybe, I said, but not yet. Not if we stay smart. Smart. He laughed, harsh and broken. We were smart to come to Antarctica. Smart to build a station on top of something we didn't understand. Smart to ignore every warning that told us to leave. Look where smart got us. Enough, Koval snapped. The commander's right. We survive. That's the job. That's all that matters. But I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. Some part of me, the part that had heard the ancient voice in the ice, that had seen the markers standing against the storm, that part knew we were already dead, We just hadn't stopped moving yet. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of huddling in darkness, rationing chemical heat, trying to keep blood flowing to extremities that kept going numb. We told stories to stay awake, shared memories from before Antarctica, from lives that felt impossibly distant. McCarthy talked about his first field season, studying glaciers in Greenland. Koval described growing up in Alaska, learning to respect the cold from her grandfather. I told them about my first command, a forward operating base in hostile territory, and how I'd learned that leadership wasn't about having answers. It was about pretending you did even when everything was falling apart. "Did you ever lose anyone?" McCarthy asked. "Yes. Everyone who commands long enough does. You make decisions that cost lives. You carry those names forever." "Kim's name," Koval said softly. "Kim's name," I agreed. "And if we don't make it, someone else will carry ours." On the third day, the storm broke. We dug ourselves out to find the world transformed. The ice had shifted. What had been a flat plain was now broken terrain, ridges and valleys that hadn't existed before. And everywhere, more markers. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe. Stretching into the distance like monuments in a graveyard we hadn't known existed. "My God," McCarthy breathed. We were standing in the middle of something vast, something ancient, a settlement maybe, or a warning. The markers weren't random. They formed patterns, alignments, suggesting purpose and intelligence and timescales that made human history look like a blink. "We need to document this," McCarthy said, reaching for his camera. "This changes everything. It proves we don't belong here," I interrupted. "We need to move. Now." But even as I said it, I knew we wouldn't. The cold had done its work. Koval's movements were sluggish, her responses delayed. McCarthy's face was gray, lips blue. Frostbite, hypothermia. All the enemies we'd been fighting were winning. I checked my own extremities. No feeling in 3 fingers. Toes were questionable. My thoughts felt slow, fuzzy around the edges. The symptoms were familiar. I'd seen them in training scenarios, read about them in survival manuals. But reading about dying and actually dying are very different experiences. "Sit down," I told them. "Both of you. Conserve energy." "What are you doing?" Koval asked. I was activating the emergency locator beacon I'd salvaged from the station. One last attempt. One final call into the void, hoping someone was listening. The signal went out. Whether anyone received it, I'd never know. We sat together, backs to one of the markers, sharing the last of our heat packs. The sky above was clear now, an impossible blue that hurt to look at. Beautiful and merciless in equal measure. "Do you think anyone will find us?" McCarthy asked. "Eventually." "Maybe. What will they think happened?" I looked at the markers surrounding us, at the ancient language carved into surfaces that shouldn't exist in this place, at the evidence of something we'd been taught was impossible. "They'll think what they always think. Equipment failure, navigation error, tragic accident. They'll seal the reports and forget we existed. But we'll know," Koval said. "Even if no one believes it, we'll know the truth." "We'll know," I agreed. The cold crept closer. My vision blurred at the edges. I felt myself drifting, thoughts scattering like snow in wind. Somewhere distant, I heard the humming again. 3 short, 1 long, but it didn't sound threatening anymore. It sounded almost sad, almost apologetic. We hadn't been meant to find this place, hadn't been meant to wake what slept beneath the ice. But we had, and now we were paying the price that trespassers always pay. My last thought, before the cold took me completely, was wondering if the next crew would be smarter. If they'd see the warnings, we couldn't. If they'd leave before it was too late. But I knew they wouldn't. Humans never do. We push forward, always forward into mysteries we don't understand and dangers we can't predict. Because that's what we are. That's what drives us. And maybe that's what will end us too. The ice remembers. That's what I learned in those final moments. The ice remembers everything. Every expedition that came before. Every crew that vanished. Every mystery left unsolved. It holds those memories in crystalline suspension, waiting for the day when someone finally listens. But by then, it's always too late. They found our bodies 3 months later, when the weather cleared enough for search aircraft to reach the region. The official report stated equipment failure and navigational error, a tragic but understandable accident in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The station was abandoned, marked for future demolition. The area was declared off-limits pending environmental assessment. The markers we documented aren't mentioned in any report. The recordings McCarthy made, gone. The evidence we died trying to preserve, erased as if it never existed. But others will go. Others always do. Antarctica still calls to the curious, the ambitious, the ones who think they can master what can't be mastered. And when they arrive at coordinates that look safe on a map but hold secrets in the ice, when they build their stations and drill their cores and think they're alone, they'll hear it. The scratching, the humming, the countdown that started long before humans walked upright and will continue long after we're gone. 3 short, 1 long. A question, an answer, a warning we're still too young to understand. Outpost 09 never checked in again. The crew never came home. But the ice remembers. And on quiet nights when the wind is right and the stars shine cold and clear over the frozen continent, you can still hear them. Still hear us, scratching at the walls, trying to get out, or trying to keep something else from getting in. The ice doesn't say which.